I'm Garrett Labonte, chairperson of LFC Boston, and I would like to welcome you to our fourth installment of the LFC Boston Speaker Series. Today, Nick Sapia, our webmaster, will be hosting football executive, former Liverpool FC board member, and current candidate for the FA chairperson, Abu Nasir. So far, we have had conversations with journalists, former players, fans, and podcasters. Today, we're excited to hear more about the business side of football from Abu. As part of this series, we'll be making a charitable donation by request of Abu. Today will benefit Leicester United for Ghana. And we'll be sharing the link in chat. It would be great if you could donate as well. We're also continuing to support the Greater Boston Food Bank and recently surpassed our initial target of $1,000. With that, I'm pleased to introduce Nick Sapia, who will introduce Abu Nasir.
Thanks, Garrett. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our fourth episode of our online LFC Boston speaker series. I'm Nick. As mentioned, I'm the webmaster for LFC Boston. I'm joined on this Zoom by Alice Finizzi, our treasurer, who also produces this show. Big thank you to Alice and our entire committee for their involvement in making this event happen. Thanks to all of you for joining us today, especially after a pretty disappointing morning. But hopefully this next hour will give us all a chance to share a few laughs, learn a bit more about what goes on at LFC behind the scenes, and maybe commiserate a little bit and look forward to better times ahead. Special welcome to those viewers who may not be members of LFC Boston yet. We're glad you could join us for this open meeting. Really excited about our guest today, someone who's been a lifelong passionate Liverpool supporter, a player in the LFC youth system, and a former member of the LFC board, as well as quite experienced at the management levels of the premier organizations in football. Abu Nasir has been involved in football and sports since the age of 7 as a player, coach, sports business executive at both the grassroots and professional level. He's currently the CEO of GSV Sports Management, a global football consultancy. His board and advisory level experience includes non-executive, associate director, ambassador, committee and trustee roles for a number of organizations, including the FA, FIFA, Kick It Out, Liverpool FC, Sporting Equals, the Muslim Sports Council, and a number of private sector businesses, charities, and volunteer groups. Abu is currently on the final shortlist of candidates being considered for the FA chairperson position. He was recently appointed onto the FA National Game Board, which is responsible for football in England. For today's event, we'll learn a little bit more about Abu's youth playing days, his transition to a career as a football executive, his lifelong passion for Liverpool Football Club, his candidacy for FA chairperson, and much more. We'll feature questions from committee members as well as you. Please share a question in the Q&A, and we'll try to get to as many as possible at the end. Abu has graciously offered an hour for today's session, so let's get right to it. Abu, welcome to the LFC Boston Speaker Series. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Nick. Thank you for having me, and big hello to Boston. Pleasure. Feel humbled to be here with you, my fellow Liverpool fans. So, thanks for having me.
Of course, we're honored to have you. Really excited to hear about kind of the business side of things. I think in previous episodes we've had, as Garrett mentioned, a number of different kind of professions. But I want to start at the beginning. Obviously, the thing everybody has in common is of course, a passion and a love for the game of football, and in particular, Liverpool Football Club. Take us all the way back to the beginning. Where did your passion for the game come from?
Long time now. So I'm 46 now. So it started back in, I think, the 1950s. I wasn't born then, obviously, but it's my grandfather. At the time, it was India, and he was part of the Navy. And after the war, he settled down in Liverpool, worked in the docks, and luckily for me, decided to support a team called Liverpool rather than the Blue Half. So how lucky was that? But obviously, he followed, my dad followed, and his brothers and the entire family were just, passionate Liverpool fans. Watched the Shankly teams of the 60s, 70s, Bob Paisley, and so I went to my first match at the age of 7, and it was, I think it was Queen's Park. Well, it was Queen's Park Rangers, and and I fell in love after the first game. When I was about 5 or 6, my dad was trying to get me into football, and as a youngster, you don't sort of really, you worry about other things, than football. And after that first match, I just fell in love with Liverpool, and at that point, I knew what I wanted to do, and that was to become a professional player and play for Liverpool. So this long journey began, supporting Liverpool, but just that, trying to play, develop to sort of try and get, place in the Liverpool FC team at some point when I grow up. So that's where the passion has been. And I've been going to matches since I was 7, home, away, abroad, name it, I'm there. My kids obviously followed as well. So yeah, lifelong Liverpool fans.
It's amazing. So you represented both Luton Town and Liverpool through the youth ranks. I understand you actually played for Stevie Highway. What was that like going through the youth ranks at those two clubs, but in particular Liverpool?
Yes, it was a brief period at Liverpool. So I was mainly at Luton Town. So my dad moved to Luton in the 70s to work for Vauxhall General Motors, and then I was 17 at the time. Went in there. Graham Souness was manager, and we were going through that transition period where we had some, good players and not so great players at the time. And didn't quite work out for me. Had a few injuries as well. And one of the key things in England when I was growing up as a player, it was a long ball, high ball, physical football. And I was more of a technical player, small, very quick. And but Liverpool came down and said, listen, we're not looking for that type of player. We're looking for someone who's skillful. We play, pass, and move. That's our philosophy. And that's how I sort of got into Liverpool. So it was difficult to get into a lower league team, but probably more easier because of the system and the style that Liverpool played. But unfortunately, it didn't work out. And Steve Highway said, look, you got to go down the leagues, lower leagues, and come back again. Don't give up. But he said to me as well, he said to my parents as well, make sure you get education. So he was one of the few players in the 80s to have a degree, went to university. And he said, have a fallback position as well if things don't work out. And he said to me, I think at the time, 2% of players actually make the grade at professional level or at higher level. So you got to be prepared. And it was heartbreaking when I didn't eventually make it. I went down the lower leagues, played semi-professionally, and just one thing after another injury-wise. And so I had to really quit at that level at 22. So it was heartbreaking because you spend your whole childhood trying to play football, get into the team. And when it doesn't work out mentally, it's quite draining as well. But you got to bounce back. But luckily, I went to sort of a university, did my coaching badges as well. Just wanted to stay involved in football and try and get a sort of a job or a role at Liverpool as well, which was the dream. And then sort of still been trying to do that for a long time. So yeah, it was brilliant because I think Steve Highway is sort of a very intelligent guy. And he said to me, he was very, he took me aside and he said, listen, it's tough, it's especially at Liverpool. And but don't give up, keep trying. And hopefully you'll make it. But I'm still involved in football, and that's the key thing for me.
Absolutely, yeah. Little did you know, maybe despite a dream, that your footballing journey was just getting started. You mentioned your family. You have some sons playing, following in your footsteps. I understand your oldest is at Luton Town, and your other sons play locally, but have had some interest from top clubs around Europe. In looking at kind of their journey through the youth systems, what are the differences you see between your experience and the experience that they're going through currently?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more pressure now. So when I was growing up, there was pressure on me because in the 80s and 90s, I come from a South Asian background, and there wasn't a single professional player in the English leagues. So the pressure from the whole community was immense. So I had to cope with all of that growing up as a kid as well. And I think my kids, I don't think they have that similar sort of pressure because the game has evolved. It's a different type of game. There's a lot of support mechanisms available as well, and I think in England, the strategy and the playing style has changed. It's more technical now, they're keeping the ball on the floor. My kids are not going to be 6'2". They're not going to be physical. They're very technical, low center of gravity, skillful players. Similar to me as well. So my eldest is played up to under 19s EFL. Is in his final year scholarship as well. So we'll see how that goes. It's been a bit of a start-stop season as well with COVID. So it hasn't really helped him this year. But he wants to move to the States. MLS wants to go to college there as well. So we're having a big discussion about that. My younger two had a few offers with a few clubs. We're obviously been speaking to Liverpool as well. The second one had an offer from Borussia Dortmund last year. We weren't sort of prepared to move to Germany. But they enjoy their football. I don't want to put the pressure on. So I said to them, "Look, do you want to go and join the academy system?" They said, "We enjoy playing with our friends in the local leagues." And I said, "Look, whenever you're ready, let me know, and we'll think about it." So at the moment, I think in the academy system, the pressure is so much, and I think what's happening at the moment is players are turning into robots. So when I was playing as a youngster, we were free to play, go out there and play, express yourself. And I think you've got to follow a coaching method, which is, I don't think it really helps young players. Enjoy the game. Pele says it's a beautiful game. Go and enjoy it. I don't think that's happening in the academy system. There's too much pressure, and not just from parents, but from the clubs and everybody else around them. And I think it's really unfair on young children, especially from the age of 6 onwards. Your whole life playing 4 or 5 times a week, which I did as well at the same time. You don't need that pressure. Enjoy the game, and I think it will evolve slowly. Players will evolve, as they gradually grow up, 13, 14. So it's not the end of the day. If you don't start at 6, I think it's absolutely rubbish. You can, if you're good enough, you'll make it at 12, 13, 14. So yeah, I just told them, just enjoy it. Enjoy your football. That's the key thing. Keep playing.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. That's always the key. I think, the human element. These are humans playing the game, and I think certainly the pressure at the youth system at those ages is immense. To say nothing about what happens when you get to the senior level. So that's brilliant. You mentioned kind of going to Anfield the first time at the age of 7. I understand your family went to most away matches as well, but just growing up, going to Liverpool games, what were some of the memories from Anfield that have stuck with you the most over these years?
I think one of the key memories, going into Anfield, and one of the key things for me is my good friend George Sefton, who's been there for 50 years now. And just firstly, George's voice, it resonates with me from a childhood, brings me a lot of memories. So I go into the stadium and listen to George, brilliant. But I think some of the games we had over the years, just seeing my heroes, Kenny Dalglish, John Barnsley and Rush over the years. And, obviously Suarez recently as well. I loved him. Torres, Steven Gerrard, Carragher. So, but I think the key memories are some of the big games. Some of the ones I enjoyed, Dortmund, when we came back and won it in the last minute with that, Lovren goal as well. Barcelona, I think, is a great memory. That comeback, nobody expected that. So that is another brilliant memory for me as well. But I think I enjoyed it more as a child in the 80s and the 90s. So just watching the likes of Dalglish, and Rush, Souness, these type of players, amazing. Bruce Grobbelaar, and still in touch with some of them. It's brilliant. I miss the old Anfield when we had the old stadium with the wooden seats. I do sort of miss that. But I think what the owners have tried to do is keep the old atmosphere alive as well, and I'm glad that we didn't move to a new stadium as well, which was talked about for a long time. So it's there's so many great memories. But I think it's the fans, some of the fans I've known since I was a kid, and mixing with them. Some of them have passed away as well over the years. But it's like a one big family as well. Most of my connections and my friendships evolved from Liverpool Football Club, around the world. And I think that's one of the amazing things I think that Liverpool FC have, which I don't think a lot of clubs have that, the family bonding at the unit between, between all of us, around the world. I think that's really amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, certainly we can't wait to have fans in the stands for a variety of reasons, but, to see those friendships that happen in the stands and reconnect and reform those bonds, cannot wait for that to happen, for so many reasons. So that's brilliant. Let's talk about this year and this year's squad a little bit. Obviously not the title defense that we all hoped for. It does feel like this team is a little bit cursed right now. I'm not going to ask about the Leicester match. It's a little too soon, but where does this team go from here?
Look, I think it's a bit of a blip. Things haven't really worked out for us. I think there's a couple of things. I hear a lot of comments from supporters all over. I get a lot of messages as well. Very disappointed naturally, because we're all passionate. But I think what we've got to remember is, last season was what we achieved over the last few years was amazing. We had a sort of small squad, if you like to say. We got a lot of youngsters, but in terms of we haven't got a massive squad like Man City and Man United and others. In terms of what they've spent, multi-million pounds. Massive in terms of net spend, if you want to call it. But I thought we've been 100% heavy metal football for the last few years under Jurgen Klopp, and there was going to be a point where players would be exhausted mentally, physically, to keep that momentum for a very long time is amazing already. So it was going to happen at some point, but obviously massively injuries didn't help. With Henderson and Fabinho missing from midfield, playing in defence. Van Dijk, was a massive miss for us as well. Gomez was. So we had was it 13 different defensive partnerships already this season. So that says a lot. But I think what we've got to make sure is, don't be too disappointed. We'll be back next year. We're still in the Champions League. I think we'll have a good chance. Still a lot to play for. I think there's going to be a lot of twists over the season. It's been a very weird season, so it's not over yet. I still believe we still can be in there, at the end. We'll challenge for it. I'm not giving up hope. But let's get in the Champions League for next season. That's the minimum, and have a good run in the European Cup this year. And but I feel for Klopp. I feel for the players, because they work really hard. But we got to support them, throughout the whole campaign. And I think it's been difficult because it would have been nice to spend a bit of money, early January, sort of identifying the right targets. Perhaps maybe looking at with hindsight, could we have signed more experienced players, were they available? A lot of ifs and buts as well. But look, we are in this position, we got the squad, let's play. I think, Kabak would be a decent player. He's young. He looks okay to me as well. So let's see. I'm not giving up. Definitely not giving up.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's great perspective. Certainly anxiously awaiting, the resumption of the Champions League. Do you think this team can make a run at the European Cup?
I think we've got less games now. Obviously, we're not in the other domestic competitions. So we just the Premier League and the Champions League to play for. So I think just need that confidence. I think they're getting that confidence back. You can look at Salah, you look at Mane, Firmino. You can see that confidence coming back. But we've been unfortunate, few mistakes. Alisson made a great save, bit of a mistake as well today again. But listen, they'll come back from it. It's going to happen at some point. But I think let's have a good run in the Champions League. I think we'll do okay in the Champions League. We always do. So I think Klopp will get them back to their best. We're lucky to have such an amazing manager, and we got to support him. The board have got to support him. The owners have really got to support him. We need him there for long as possible. And let's see what happens. I feel confident. Let's get to Istanbul in the summer. Let's all go there, enjoy ourselves, and win the Champions League again.
Wonderful. Yeah, let's hope so. Maybe a little bit of that European magic. Maybe hopefully just what this team needs. So, just in your eyes, who've been the standout performers so far this year?
Ooh, Adam, that's a tough question. I've been thinking about that. Look, a lot of players have been off form. I think far too many players have been off form this season. So it's difficult to pick out. But I'd probably say Fabinho, based on the fact that he played out of position and had a wonderful performance, in defence. And considering we didn't concede too many goals when he was playing. So I've got to give to Henderson again. Makes a massive difference. The most probably underrated player in Premier League history, I'd probably say one of them, if I'm not exaggerating. So I'd probably say Fabinho and then Henderson.
Yeah, it's just incredible the cover they were able to provide, and kind of seamlessly sliding into those center back positions and doing more than an admirable job. I think it speaks to kind of their talent, and I think just the level of intelligence they have playing football, and obviously their presence in the midfield is certainly missed. So Just, and I don't want to dwell on this too much, but if there been any missteps this season, from your perspective on the business side of things? You mentioned the center back saga of January. Who knows how prudent it was. Hindsight's always 2020, but to have Matip as the only experienced center back with his injury history going into the season, was that a mistake? Any missteps that are kind of costing the squad at this point in the season from your perspective?
Yeah, I think starting off in the season, it was a bit uncertain. So we started off making the mistake around trying to, go through the furlough scheme, trying to get government funding, which was, it was a big mistake. But I think the key thing was we should have actually we signed Jota. Massive signing for us. Unfortunately, he got injured, because I don't think we would have lost many points as we did this season. So Jota was a brilliant signing, £45 million. But obviously we sold a few younger players as well. But what we should have done, I think, early January, especially when Van Dijk got injured, we should have looked at a world-class centre-back and started speaking to clubs way back in November, December, and getting that ready for the 1st of Jan, And I think that last-minute panic, I think, especially when Matip got injured and we knew we lost him for most of the season, and it was sort of a panic buy, let's be honest. I don't want to get into too much trouble by criticizing my colleagues, but things could have been done differently. We should have spent a bit more money. I know sort of Graham Souness spoke about it recently as well. We're champions, the Premier League champions. Make a big investment, and I know the owners have got a brilliant business strategy. You can't fault that. They've done brilliant. But if I was making decisions, in the summer, start of the season, I would have been looking to strengthen the squad, getting a few more world-class players in, and really look to retain that title. But unfortunately, it didn't happen, because of a number of reasons. But I'm hoping, next summer, we probably get some world-class players, hopefully. But we should have looked at our transfer strategy. We should have gone for a couple of world-class players. Spent possibly big. Let's hope it doesn't come back to bite us at the end of the season, because unthinkable if we can't qualify for the Champions League, from a business perspective, but obviously for supporters as well, So sometimes as a business, as a club, you've got to invest, and you get a good return on that investment. You have to take some calculated risks. So I'm not going to be too critical, because, FSG have done a brilliant job. Everybody connected to the club who's worked behind the scenes have done a massive, brilliant job. But, I think we made a slight error in terms of this season.
Yeah, and again, not to dwell on it, but can you just quickly explain why the Champions League is so important, and why the top four position is almost an absolute must, especially how FSG kind of think about things? Yeah,
well, if you look at the prize money, the additional games, the TV revenue, the revenue from UEFA, you're looking at £100 million. So, that's a major loss for any club, So from a business perspective, we need to be in there. The other thing is about attracting players in the summer as well. If you're in the Champions League, obviously it helps massively. So, the importance of it is, it's very important, in terms of the revenue, the business side of it, attracting the right players, all of that comes into mind. So, it's unthinkable if we can't qualify this year for the Champions League.
Yeah. Speaking of FSG and the current ownership group, let's go to the previous owners. You were the driving force, really, in the attempted fan takeover from Tom Hicks and George Gillette. Can you talk about how that came up and kind of what that process was like? Yeah.
So obviously, initially when Hicks and Gillette took over, everyone was really excited. Rafa was exciting. We thought, wow, we're going to get millions to spend here, and didn't materialize. We're in serious financial difficulties. Looking at administration. So I started phoning a few fans. Diehard Liverpool fans. I said, look, what do we do about this? It's really worrying. So we got together, spent a lot of time, and said, let's look at a different model. First and foremost, let's try and find a buyer with a lot of money. So I started contacting various people in the Middle East, in Russia, in the US, name it. I was there trying to get investors in. And then we also had Plan B, and Plan B was the fan ownership of the club. And we looked at the model in Germany, for example, and turn it into a social enterprise where let's raise 300 million pounds. The ideal aim was 1 billion, and we knew realistically we couldn't, because obviously you need the revenue sort of in the long term as well, the transfer fees and things like that. But I think within a year we raised about 60 million pound we had committed. Just Liverpool fans. Whether it was £1,000, whether it was £6,000, and that sort of gained momentum. And then obviously FSG came on board. There were some negotiations with Sheikh Mohammed at the time as well. And as usual, sort of the Middle Eastern, they weren't 100% sure. They were moving very slowly, and luckily, sort of FSG came on board, and it was brilliant. So first meeting we had, we were a bit skeptical, because obviously after that issue with Hicks and Gillette, first meeting I had with John Henry and Tom Werner, and I said to John, hopefully, we need a lot of money. We need millions. Are we going to compete with Man City? And he joked, and he said to Tom Werner, Tom, have you got a bit? He said, how much do you need? I said, £1 billion. He said, Tom, have you got £1 billion on your back pocket? That sense of humor he had. And I said, no, John, I'm serious. So he said, look, we got a different strategy. We haven't got billions at our disposal. We're going to look at the financial fair play. We're going to run the club differently to Man City. It's going to be run like a business as well. But at the same time, we've got a plan. And that was refreshing to hear. And obviously over the weeks and the months, looked at the strategy. And one of the key things was obviously I was representing supporters, and you're getting hundreds of email messages, with views from supporters as well. And we've probably got the most intelligent fans in the world, experts in football, experts in business. And, we fed all that back to the board, to the owners. So obviously coming from the States, they done brilliant with the Red Sox. But Liverpool FC was completely different. It was a different beast, and I think they learned the hard way as well initially. So giving that feedback to the owners and the leadership team was really, really crucial, from the fans. Open and honest feedback. We've had a few arguments over the years, robust, but we're all passionate. We want the best for Liverpool Football Club. Everybody does. The owners want the best for Liverpool Football Club. But we're not going to spend, 1.5 billion like City. It's impossible. It's not financially viable as well. We don't want to face another situation where we go into administration similar to Hicks and Gillette. So we've got to be financially astute. It's got to be run properly, and they did that. We had success. They promised us the league. We got it within 5 years, 6 years. So brilliant. So a lot of hard work goes behind the scenes. Very tough decisions. The revenue from commercial partnerships. Billy Hogan and his team have done a massive job, fantastic job. And we're starting to catch up with Manchester United, which we sort of lagged behind over the years. So it's been tough, but they've done a good job. And I think, listen, we had a bad season on the pitch, because I don't think fans care about how much money you got, how much money you're generating, how much money the owner's spending or not. They don't care about that. They want success on the pitch. They want the big players. They want the Mbappes. They want the Koulibalis. So it's a tough decision trying to balance it out. And I've had a few years as well when I was sort of representing the fans. Everyone had different views, and I obviously come from a football business perspective as well, where you got to look for the right balance. And fans don't want to hear that. They want to make things which is, in terms of spending money within the club. They want lower ticket prices, all that kind of stuff. Access to tickets, which has been a major problem over the years. We could easily sell 100,000 every game, easily, no problem with that. So it's massive, and I do feel, I do feel for the owners. It's a tough job, but considering that they've done a brilliant job, over the years.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. They're methodical. They're savvy operators, but I think we can all take comfort in the fact that we won't have another Hicks and Gillette situation, or even the situation that Barcelona finds themselves in right now. That's not likely to happen at Liverpool, and that's a good thing for all of us. I mean, you mentioned some of it. It sounds like, certainly increasing revenue and finding additional revenue streams was one of the big drivers. But the early days of their ownership, we're a little bit up and down on the pitch, but it's very clear now that the foundation for future success was being built. What did you see behind the scenes that gave you confidence, even while the results on the pitch were not at the level that certainly the fans wanted, but certainly that the ownership group wanted?
I think looking from a football perspective and working in the industry, what I've seen within football clubs, very badly run in England, from my experience. A lot of clubs, the industry has been lucky because they've had a lot of revenue coming in through TV money and other initiatives. But in terms of the structure, having a good governance structure, having a strategy, a longer term strategy, where you got the processes and the systems in place. And, like you said, Nick, they were very methodological in terms of how they actually looked at the current situation, the financial management side of it. They looked at every single thing in detail. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, amazing. It was quite inspiring to see that. So I think that was really, really, initially when I looked at it, I thought, wow, these guys know what they're doing from a business perspective, but they know how to run a sports organization, how to run a football club. Obviously, in terms of getting to know the local fan base as well was very, very crucial. So the early years, it was pretty tough. But we had guys like myself and other people within the committee who actually fed back all of that. And they took that on board. They weren't arrogant. They were very humble, very down to earth. If there was things, if they were criticized, they took it on board and they learned from it as well. And they acknowledged if they made any mistakes and they rectified some of that. So that was good to see. But I think the strategic aims and the way they sort of financially managed and restructured the club internally gave us a lot of confidence to say, yeah, we're in good hands here. FSG know what they're talking about. They know what they're doing. Even though we might be frustrated because we're not getting the superstars in initially, but they've done a good job. Gradually got the players. Built a really good system, a good foundation, which is great for the longer term.
Yeah, that's true. Difficult to argue with their commitment to winning. It's clearly there. Obviously on the pitch, we've seen kind of how Jurgen was really the piece that kind of put everything together and took us over the top. I think his presence and the way the players respond to him is obviously evident. Do you think his presence has a similar effect kind of behind the scenes? So everybody that works in the front office, do you think does his presence translate and in a similar way to kind of how the players have responded to him?
Absolutely. You're going to give Jurgen a lot of credit for that. He's come in, sort of that Bill Shankly-like, figure, and it was amazing. It was brilliant when we first got him in. For me, when the club was looking for managers, it had to be Jurgen. We needed someone like Jurgen, and I think it's Jurgen's passion, his commitment, his enthusiasm, that resonates throughout the whole club, not just amongst the playing staff, but everybody connected to the club. And that was really, really important for us. And he's got the leadership skills. He's a very down-to-earth person as well. I think that's massive in football. And I think he's very humble as well. But his experience and he had a vision for the club. He knew what kind of system he wanted to play, the type of strategy he adopted, the team that he needed from the coaching team all the way down to the medical team. He knew what he wanted, and that gave us real confidence. Also the players. And ideally, if we had millions at our disposal, we probably could have got the right players that he wanted initially. And I think one of the key things Jurgen didn't do was he didn't panic into buying the players that he didn't want. And there was a January when we needed players, and Jurgen decided not to sign any because he wanted the right players. And he wanted the Van Dijks of this world, to make that difference. And we invested. We got a very good return on our investment with Van Dijk. So that's an example of the influence that Jurgen has. And he's not going to spend money for the sake of it. He needs the right personnel in there to make it all work. And even now, we're going through a sort of transitional period this season, and he certainly knows the players he wants, the players that he needs to do the job that he wants them to do. And so I'm not too worried. We'll get the right players in initially. So, but Jurgen is massive, and we got to do everything we can to keep him happy, keep him long as we can, at Liverpool. I know it's difficult sometimes, huge amounts of pressure. He's a human being at the end of the day, he's got a family. So I'm just thinking, let's have him for at least 5 more years if we can have him, and let's win a few more trophies, and we'll take it from there. But listen, he's massive. I love the man. I think most of our fans love him, and he's massive for this club, so yeah, let's hope he stays there for a long time.
Yeah, we've said it before, but long may he serve. Cool. Let's shift maybe a little bit beyond Liverpool. Your involvement at the board level, but you've also been involved, pretty significantly with the FA and FIFA. We'll get to more on the FA and your candidacy for chairman, but also important causes like Kick It Out and the Muslim Sports Council. Can you talk a little bit about those two organizations? How did those come about, and what is working on behalf of those organizations been like?
Yeah, it's a sort of diverse range of organizations. So I'm really pleased that I've been involved with them, because it gave me a huge range of experiences, the skills to actually not just to sort of take it into football, but within industry, various industries. Because you learn so much, you engage with so many people. So Kick It Out at the moment, obviously, a lot of issues happening at the moment. Kick It Out, I initially became a campaigner. I think I must have been about 16 at the time. And one of the reasons, I just, as a player growing up, especially sort of playing home and away, I experienced a lot of racism myself as well over the years. And the first one was, I was about 8, which I didn't mention earlier on. My dad, after a football match, got beaten up very badly, was attacked by probably about 12 or 13, football hooligans at the time, racially abused, and left for dead. So as a, youngster growing up as a child, and that just sort of stayed in your memory. And one of the key things he said to me was, listen, it's only a small minority. Don't let that ever affect you, and don't hold it against anybody. He said, there's 99% of the people in this world are really, really good, and they're going to be your friends when you grow up. Don't let it, put you off from football. And I remembered that. And at the age of 10, I went to another match. I went to watch Luton Town versus Millwall in '84 FA Cup match, and one of the worst riots in English football history. And again, bad experience there, but kept going and kept going. It happened when you go to away matches, you experience a lot of that as well. And one of the few sort of South Asians going into matches, from the 80s, 90s, experienced a lot of that. So I became a campaigner for Kick It Out. Obviously worked with them in terms of various committees and campaigned to make a lot of changes. Muslim Sports Council came on board because there's been a lot of Muslim players and sports people within England who didn't have a voice, who didn't have that support, and so working with various entities, organisations, clubs, putting a support mechanism as well, and advising the FA, the Premier League, and others from that perspective. So it has been a lot of issues. We had an issue at Liverpool as well. When a few Muslims got racially abused. Newcastle United, whether they wanted to, had one of the players didn't want to represent a gambling company, the shirt sponsorship. Sometimes it's very difficult how you manage some of that, because commercially you have to wear a sponsor's shirt, and so very difficult decisions. But we've got a very good relationship with a lot of organisations, a lot of clubs, built that over the years, so it helps big time. Obviously with the FA. Massive role. I worked in the Premier League just before that, 3 years ago. I got my dream role, which is developing the elite academy manager system, where I worked with 92 league clubs, making sure they looked at the academy system in a different way, and restructuring some of that. And that was really, really interesting, because that was my passion. And then recently joining the FA National Game Board, which is responsible for managing, a lot of the funding, looking after the national game in the country, big responsibility, and a lot of positive changes is happening. I've got to say, it's, obviously last year or so, it's been about discrimination, racism, seen a lot of that on Twitter, and there's a lot of great work that's been happening behind the scenes. And for me, it's making sure we got the strategy right. We've done a lot of work over the years, and sometimes it's been tick box exercises. And the key thing for me is, let's see what the outcomes are, what are the results. But to get the results, you got to know what the real problems are. So firstly, around equality, you've got to make sure you have equalities, diversity, inclusion embedded in everything you do within any organization, and football is no exception. And secondly, each characteristics around diversity has its own unique problems, whether it's racism, whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, whatever it is, they've got unique issues, and we have to tackle each one differently, have a different strategy for each one. So let's find out what the problem is. How do we resolve some of that? That's really important for me, coming from an FA national game perspective, and having a longer term structure. But you can't just do it on your own as the FA. You need all the football governing bodies involved. You need the government. You need various stakeholders to be working together to tackle that. Social media companies recently, the Facebooks and the Twitters, they got to play a huge role in that. So it's not straightforward. It's quite complex, and to do that effectively, we've got to get everybody around the table, have a effective strategy in place to tackle some of that. So let's not just set something up because when we've got a problem, let's not be reactive. Let's have a strategy where we're proactive. We've got a longer term strategy to handle some of that and put some serious resources into that to tackle these problems. A united football, is more successful, and we need it more than we need people united more than ever. With COVID, the real impact hasn't happened yet. Football clubs are going to be affected. We're going to lose a few over the years. So it has a massive impact. So we need to be working together. So it's really, really important for me. You mentioned the chair position as well, I think, Adam. That came about, obviously working in football and all the key things happening at the moment. And people said, we need someone different. We need something different. For 157 years of the FA, we've had someone coming from Eton, from a very, from the elite background, let's put it this way, and they looked at a few people and said, look, you need to apply for this. And I said, are you serious? I thought it was a joke. And I said, no, I don't want to tick any more boxes, this diversity, inclusion. I'm not ticking any more boxes. I've lost the energy. I don't think I have the enthusiasm, because I'm going to go through the process and I want to see change. And people said, look, I think there's opportunity there. And I said to a few of them, right, yeah, okay, I'll probably go for it. So on Christmas Eve, suddenly, I woke up and it's over Sky Sports News, and I thought, wow, where did this come from? So my good friend Dave Trahan, who was the journalist at the time, he was ringing me, my phone was off. So I had loads of messages. I said, Abby, it's come out in the open, it's in the media, you've got to say a few things. I thought, oh, great, brilliant. Thanks, guys. So I decided to do an interview in the afternoon. I said, yeah, I am going to go for the position. I was a bit unsure at the time. Now I'm going through the process. It's going to take a few weeks. March. Let's see how it goes. It's going well so far. Fingers crossed. What I said was, I'm not the FTSE 100 company boss. I've managed multi-billion-pound programs, not a problem. I've managed big organizations, worked at every level, not just in football, in the charity sector, in the voluntary sector, in the private sector, in the city. So it's a diverse range of experience I've got. But the key thing is, I've lived it, in terms of what the fans are looking for. I represent probably 90% of people who are involved in football, the supporters, the diverse range of stakeholders in football, built a good relationship with them. And I'm the little guy, that, like, as Jurgen Klopp says, the normal one. I'm probably, it's bigger than the normal one. I'm really a nobody, in terms of the big, the famous footballers that are looking into this role, the big politicians. I'm just a normal guy who represents the normal fans, the normal people within football. And I lived through the great moments. I lived through the challenging moments, and and a lot of things need to be addressed. So my view and my strategy is to go in there and make a positive difference, but make a real change, but unite everybody together. The footballing family, the various stakeholders, the various organizations, the fans groups. Let's work together on the longer term strategy, because there's tough times to come. Commercially as well, attracting investment into the game internationally as well, really, really important. So yeah, so that's my pitch really. I've got to be honest with it. I'm not going to come in as this famous ex-politician or a FTSE 100 boss. I'm the normal one, and let's see what happens.
Absolutely. The normal one worked out for Liverpool, but no, that's a brilliant background. I think your experience on so many different levels, it would be a meaningful change in that position, which I think would be refreshing for everyone. Specific to that, let's say you are the chairperson. What what would your priorities be? What would kind of your the pillars of your candidacy be, but what would your priorities be if you were to be in that role?
I think the first and foremost is any organization, one of the key things I like to do is look at the governance mechanisms within that organization, having the right governance systems in place, having the right policies and the procedures. So it's got to be a financially viable organization, and you look at some of that and having the right strategies in place, making sure it's inclusive, which represents football as a whole. So I think that's one of the priorities. The other priority is making sure we attract that level of investment, getting the right partners on board, working with the right stakeholders as well, and tackling the key issues. I think VAR, listen, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of VAR. If someone gave me a magic wand and said, would you get rid of VAR? I would. I'd get rid of it tomorrow. I'm not a big fan of VAR. I think it needs to go. You still got to make that decision. There's too much stoppages. It takes the excitement out of the game. And I think the key thing is referees and officials still have to make a decision, and they're still getting decisions wrong. And I think it's unfair on the referees. And I think as fans, everybody's got to accept, there's going to be mistakes. Referees are going to make mistakes, whether it's VAR or not. And that's part of the excitement of the game. And I know a decision could be a multi-million-pound, decision for a club, if they get it wrong. But that's the nature of football. That's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it exciting. We're all human beings. Mistakes are going to happen. And look at it. VAR is not stopping any mistakes. We're still making the mistakes. It's very tough. And it's too many stoppages. And, I'm not a big fan of VAR. Probably want to get rid of that. But I think building relationships for the FA internationally, if I go back to 2018, the World Cup bid, we should have had that in England. It was massive for us. We had everything in place, the stadiums, the infrastructure, name it, easily. But, end of the day, member organizations within FIFA vote for their right candidate. And we didn't get that. So what are the key issues? Are we seen as being too arrogant? Have we really built good relationship with the international community? Possibly not. So building these relationships internationally throughout the world, I think is crucial for us. I think we've got to be a bit more humble. Humility sometimes helps as well. So I think that's very, very important. Building relationships internationally with FIFA, UEFA, and other member organizations is crucial for the FA.
Absolutely. I think the VAR position alone will get you a lot of support. Today was a pretty strong example of all the frustrations, I think, with kind of how that's being done, and it's often creating much more confusion than it solves. And I totally agree. I think it's an absolute fallacy that using replay will give you a clear, definitive answer, and puts the referees in a difficult spot, to say the least. So that's a really good segue to shift to maybe some other hot topics. Maybe talking quickly about the future of TV rights. There's been a lot of grumbling, I think, about the pay-per-view model and those associated fees in the UK. Is that the future though? What does the future of TV look like from your perspective?
Look, from a business perspective, pay-per-view is probably brilliant for clubs, in terms of generating that revenue. But as a fan, as a football person, I'm quite traditional, and I believe everyone should have access to games, whether it's going to matches or watching it on TV. So from my perspective, I don't want to see pay-per-view implemented. No way. It's got to be open for everybody. I think fans are already paying a lot of money to watch football, whether it's going to the stadium or watching on TV. It's quite substantial. But at the same time, it generates a lot of income, for the game, for clubs. It's massive. So we've got to find that right balance. And I think at the moment we have got the right balance in terms of the model that we got in place, where a lot of games you've got to be subscribed to, in England, say BT Sport, whatever, to Sky Sports, which generates that income for clubs and in return helps the fans as well. But going through a pay-per-view model, I'm not really up for that. If I was a business person, at a club, yes, it generates a lot of income for us. As Liverpool, yeah, it probably would. But I don't want to see that model implemented, just for the sake of making sure football is accessible for everybody, every single fan. And it's not helpful, especially the climate and the, what we're heading towards in the next few years, the pandemic, what implications they're going to have socially and economically, definitely not. So I'm not a big fan of pay-per-view, Nick, to be honest with you.
Talking about the women's game, obviously growing in popularity pretty dramatically, especially in England. Still a lot of work to be done. I think that certainly applies to the situation at Liverpool. But specifically to the women's game, what would your plan be to kind of promote inclusion and to further kind of showcase and lift up those players and teams in the various women's leagues across the world?
Massive. I think England have been behind over the last few years. Obviously, massive in the US, in Germany as well, probably China and other places, Japan. So we're getting there, having a professional league, having a setup within the governing body FA and others to make sure it's taken seriously. A lot of investment is going on. A lot of the clubs are now investing. Our club, Liverpool, I've appointed Susan Black to lead that side of it. So there's a lot of investment going in. So it's good to see that. So, but it's got to start, from the grassroots level as well. So a huge amount of investments needs to go into the grassroots level to make sure women's football flourishes, getting the future talent ready and developing the future players. I don't think there's nowhere near enough. And there certainly needs to be a lot more investment into the women's game. Very popular, obviously with my local clubs, we've got a lot of women's teams, girls teams, and the enthusiasm is massive. And it's great to see huge interest. And I think for me personally, what I've seen in the community that I come from, which is the Muslim community, probably in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even sort of 5-10 years ago, you wouldn't see people, Muslim girls playing football. It's increased significantly. The mindset is changing. I used to get criticized a lot. I'm quite open, going to the mosque and getting people to play football, mixing with other communities. It's been a bit insular over the years, and that's slowly happening. And football makes a big difference. And I've seen some talented, young footballers, especially coming from females, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, 16-year-olds, brilliantly talented players. And what I'm seeing now is the mindset is changing, the mentality is changing, and people actually want to bring their girls to football. They want them to become players, and that's really, really pleasing to see. I'm not getting criticized when I did, 10 years ago, trying to get girls into football. It's great to see that. So, but we've got to put a lot of investment into the women's game, professionally, but also from grassroots level, and that's got to be a big priority for anybody, I think.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. To shift to a couple of questions from attendees here. Rob asks, what is your thought on the sports minister's announcement that 10 million being trickled down into the 850 or so clubs across England, and compare that to, that's on kind of one end. On the other end, you have, Liverpool and some other clubs being, the driving force behind some really tectonic shifts, in football, the potential European Super League. Just, can you share your thoughts on kind of those two very different approaches to the current state of the game?
I think, unfortunately, politicians view the game differently, and listen, it's a measly sum. It's pocket change for any club, to share that amount of money. Just give you one fact: football in England, for example, we've got 100,000 grassroots teams, and the impact of that is massive. It generates around £10 billion into the economy in England. So that is absolutely massive. And you lose half of these grassroots teams, look at the amount of revenue it generates. So it has a massive impact, socially, economically. So, and we need serious government support in terms of financial support, but giving other in-kind support as well. They need to understand the game and the impact it has on the wider society. And I don't think they're getting that, government ministers. And so I think it was a bit of an insult to actually propose that level of money within the game, to be shared by clubs. So yeah, I just don't think they understand the game. But I think one of the key things is, you can be critical, but you need to bring them on board and come up with a solution. So my key things, when I'm critical, bring the solutions and let's take it to the table and let's talk to ministers and other stakeholders so they understand the impact of the game, but they understand the impact to themselves as well. Because everybody wants to see a healthy football, football entity, but healthy country as well, financially, away free from crime, all that kind of stuff. And football plays a big role in that, and they've got to understand that and the financial impact that it has within the country. So let's hope they understand that, we can all get around the table and make sure we're making the right decisions.
Absolutely. We'll end coming to the end of our time here, and this has absolutely been a fascinating and wonderful conversation. A couple personal questions. This is obviously a very competitive space. What drives you every day?
What drives me, I think, is Nick, the passion for football. I gave up so much for football. It's fair to say, look, people, I don't think I'm the only crazy one in this world, a Liverpool fan. I think my whole life revolved around Liverpool Football Club since the age of 7. I wanted to get, involved with Liverpool one way or another. And I think that's been the driving factor for me. And it still is, the passion for Liverpool FC and the passion for football. And no doubt, life has revolved around Liverpool FC and football, and it continues to do so, and just to stay involved in football in any capacity, that really drives me, and it's going to continue to drive me, all the way.
That's wonderful. And then finally, just if you could share a few words about the charity that you introduced us to. I think that's one of the great things about doing this is we've been put in touch with some different causes that are near and dear to hearts of Liverpool fans, obviously here in Boston, but around the world. So Leicester United for Ghana. I know you've had some Liverpool players involved with that project in Ghana, but could you just share a little bit more about that specific charity endeavor?
Sure, yeah. So one of the key things that we do, I work with a number of charities, and what we do, myself, my friends and associates, we contribute at 5%, between 5 and 10% of our annual income to charity. And one of the key things we do, we try and raise a lot of funding. So we pick a few charities around the world that need support. So the next charity is Ghana. We're trying to build a girls' sports complex for females in poverty-stricken areas. So football pitches, indoor facilities, and an education center for them as well, and making sure they've got clean water within their villages and the surrounding towns. So we're trying to raise, over £100,000 initially for that. And we've been doing that for about 10 years now, different parts of the world. And we've done really successful and had a lot of support from the ex-Liverpool players, the likes of Phil Thompson, Phil Neal, Alan Kennedy, John Barnes, a lot of players have supported us. And we're doing that again. Unfortunately, we couldn't put the events on because of the pandemic, but we hope to organize a few more. So that's what the project is about. So this year we linked up with Leicester United, a local team, who are raising a lot of funding for this project, and we're working with Human Relief Foundation. And Mdad and Abel, who are watching, both MBEs, got the Freedom of the City of London as well. Amazing guys who do a lot of work. They raise hundreds of thousands for charity each year. And I'm really pleased to be involved with them as well. And that's what the charity is about, helping each other. Liverpool fans over the years have been amazing to help us with that. So that's what this project is about. And hopefully we can build a nice sports complex for the girls in Ghana.
That's brilliant. Wonderful. We've come to the end of the hour here. Abu, I can't thank you enough. It's been a really wonderful, insightful, and fascinating conversation. I know I speak on behalf of the committee, certainly Jack. We'd love to have you here in Boston and save you a seat at our home, the Phoenix Landing, to watch a match with you when we can travel again. But thank you so much. It's really it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure we'll all be watching Sky Sports pretty carefully and hear what happens with the FA chair position. But we wish you all the best in that endeavor and everything else you have going. So that wraps up this episode. On behalf of everybody, thank you for joining us. The next chat is actually coming up pretty soon, so we're going to be back at it Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. Following the Leipzig match, we're going to have Peter Moore, who just stepped down as CEO of Liverpool FC. So he'll be joining us on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Again, big thank you to Abu. A reminder that you can learn more about Leicester United for Ghana via the link in the chat. There'll also be some social posts about that charity as well, and we'll hope you can donate if you're able. And also keep an eye out for the Greater Boston Food Bank. Thank you again to everybody who's supported that endeavor. We've exceeded our goal, which is really wonderful, and we couldn't have done that without everybody's support. So thanks for joining us today. Abu, you'll never walk alone, and up the Reds. We'll see you in Istanbul.
Thank you, Nick. And thanks, Boston, everybody watching, and hopefully see you in Boston very soon.
Absolutely. Take care.